Welcome, everybody, to the Keijsers Koning channel, where we interview artists about their ideas, discuss their techniques and oeuvre. Today, we welcome Amalia Angulo, who currently has her show Outer on view at Keijsers Koning here in Dallas. We were discussing her exhibition and the series of work she's showing in it, as well as delving into her narrative and ideas that push her to create. Amalia was born in Havana, Cuba in 1980. She graduated from the Altos de Chavon School of Art and Design in La Romana in the Dominican Republic, and she currently resides in the Hudson Valley. She's currently actually speaking from a hotel room, but that's because her studio is disposed, so we'll bear with it. I'm really excited to have this conversation also about the work and not just learning more about you, but also always about these great narratives that are exhibited within your works. There's something so mysterious about them. Even though I understand each component within your work, there's just this undertone of narrative that I can't quite explain. And the best way I have had to explain it's magic realism or being, it's an atmosphere of like being stuck in a Gabriel Garcia Marquez book that just you feel this surrounding around you. You just breathe it, you smell it. And that's always the sense that I have with your work. It's an experience in and of itself. But why don't we start out with kind of welcoming you to the channel and say a little bit about your background and how you got to be in upstate New York.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. My name is Amalia. I'm a Cuban artist. I was born in Havana, and my family and I had to emigrate from Cuba, and I now reside in the Hudson Valley in New York. And
That's quite a journey to make. I'm always kind of surprised, but I've learned now that you hate the hot weather, so you've selected probably one of the coldest spots in the States, which is upstate New York. If you can, could you walk me through your idea about this exhibit Outer? Mainly because when we started to talk, you had one idea, and then eventually you went to more of a narrative about animals, relationship to animals, and these figures in kind of floral settings, almost very Amazonian, or very exotic as far as you could feel certain heat emanating from the paintings.
so I in my past shows, I was working a lot of like my feelings about the world around me. A person that is for a big part of my life, I couldn't be where I was born. I had to emigrate, I had to change to another cultures, another countries. So I'm like used to observing my surroundings all the time. How is my relationship with that? So in this show, I just wanted to focus on myself, on my inner world more than what is outside. I feel like I am very connected with nature. Obviously, I love animals and all that, but I also find like a connection between like the human spirit and animal spirit. I don't think it's different. I don't think a lot of people see humans are no, we came from probably from somewhere else because animals are so well adapted. But I think along the way humans lost that inner connection with nature, and I just want to go back to that and express that we are one. We are one with nature. And also, we are not really so powerless. We can find that same strength that animals have to survive and to thrive in the wild. We are wild, and we don't have to be so we have that same force inside of us. So I wanted to transmit that, and like how I feel inside, this feeling that I have when I outside, when I touch literally grass, see the sky, all that, less about a critique or like a conversation about society and that I was having before.
The works prior, you were dealing a lot with through a lot of humor, I must say, but a lot about aspects of, I would even say, colonialism, or at least Western viewpoints. I'm thinking of the bathers where you had these white people kind of bathing in the sun, but they were like bubbling up and boiling. And that that with this particular series, what struck me so much is that the animals almost have a better understanding of where we are, at least within these paintings. We can really identify through them and through their eyes what is happening and what it's kind of an assurance, I find. I am curious, and a lot of people have asked this question to me. Where do you find the inspiration for the human figures? I mean, there's elements of link the women together, but there is also a very individualistic moment in them. Where do you find is it just something that you start painting, or is it more, do you have a model form?
I just go from what I like, my own features. Like,
Hmm.
basically, it's like it's not a self-portrait, but also it's like the ideal of how I see myself. Not necessarily, well, yes, like I trying to identify myself in the painting with obviously my characteristic, like my dark hair, all that. So I go from that and I just develop the figure. They are not the same copy paste character every time. I don't know if that's what you meant in the question.
No, it is. It is. I mean, there's definitely a similarity to each of the figure, but it's not identical. It's just this kind of starting point that you kind of see, and then each painting develops, you see these other traits kind of being pulled out of them.
It's like when I paint, I start discovering new ways of creating the not only the figure but the surroundings. I go like evolving. Even like if I do another show with this same subject and the same inspiration, it will probably go evolving. It will not be, that's not how it works for me. I cannot
Mhm.
do face all the time for years and years and do the same thing. Sometimes I would like to be that way, but it doesn't happen that way for me.
That's usually with life.
But yeah, but I think that you can say that it's the same type of woman in all of them. Maybe different aspects of the same woman for this show at least.
Which makes sense. What I was actually quite happy also with the show is that we were able to show graphite work, so works on pencil and paper, and then also colored
Pencils.
pencils on paper, excuse me. And what was so fascinating about it is that your graphite work is very dimensional, right? It's a lot of shadow play, so the figures are much fuller. And what's curious about your works of color pencil on paper is that they're much flatter in a sense. It's almost like layers upon layer. And whereas normally when you introduce color, things become fuller or things become rounded. In these works, I thought it was very interesting to see kind of the vision of you would have a figure, you have your background, you have your image of an animal or so, and it just becomes these like stepping points. And I thought that was very interesting to see your thought process in it and the way you approach your compositions. And then we get to the paintings and we see a combination of the two, right? We see fuller figures, we see the kind of shadow play that you're bringing in by contrasting tones, but that layering of floral work, some of them creating kind of these aura fields. It was very informative to kind of see your method of working and the way you're approaching your paintings. I mean, it's always funny that we've talked about this before. You can always identify the components you paint, right? They're the plants, the animals, and the figures. But every time I look at your work, I see different things and I just walk away with different stories. And I just find that absolutely mesmerizing because I'm bonking my head. I'm like, but I know what's in them. I know exactly the figures that are there, but there's always something else that I pull away from where I'm like, where a tangent my brain will go into. And that's been especially in this show because of the eyes, the way the composition is created. I find it very intriguing that you're able to pull that off each time. It's kind of simplicity, but complex at the same time. I wanted to ask you something since we were talking about self-portraiture, the idea of referencing yourself, and I've been thinking a lot about Dorian Gray. I don't know if you're familiar with that idea, but
Yes.
do you find any inspirations at all from literature? Because it that image of you painting parts of yourself, parts of you that you're constantly leaving behind on your canvases.
About the literature. Yes, of course. Like I was very well like fed with stories and books since I was little. I love to read. My favorite place to go was always the bookstore. That was like my dream, to get more books and read them. So I draw not only from like my culture, my own upbringing in Cuba, but from all those stories, all that like universal archetypes, all those stories that connect and just create like an inner world where you, after that, you see things and you connect like dots. It's very like, I love that, like a resource that I have. What was the second part of the
No, that's the part. There wasn't a particular
Yeah.
point. There is something you mentioned in there that I wanted to kind of continue on.
I don't know if I answered, but yes, like when I read, for example, 1001 Nights,
Yes.
that's one of my, and The Hobbit, those books, all those books. When I paint, I feel like they are with me all the time.
So I have another question for you in the sense of your relationship to the body, right? A lot of your work is about body and form, and be it in the using it as a composition. I find it intriguing, and I'm curious because your parents, or your mother being a dancer, your father being an architect, those are very body related vocations, and mindsets. So I'm curious how that may have influenced you, or where certain things that you picked up on. Architecture is about the relationship of a body to space. And then of course dancing is the body within space, in the sense of movement influencing the audience. So I'm curious, was it something that an awareness that you grew up with, or was it something that you later on now have kind of looked back and been like, hey, that's interesting how that has become part of my work?
So my dad did study architecture for like a year or two, but he's a sculptor.
I was a sculptor.
But
Apologies. Sorry.
but more so, he works directly with human body,
Hmm.
the human figure. So I grew up obviously seeing. I always went with them to the art school. They were teaching in the National Art School in Cuba. So I was very well absorbing. I was always absorbing.
Yeah.
Like my dad working with teaching and seeing how you create the body from like the clay from. But also my mom being a dancer. You see the body, the movement of her students. It was beautiful to see the sweat, the how can you practice, and just the effort that these people have to perfect their body, and their bodies were so perfect. It was, everything was, the movements were they connected their bodies to the music, to the movement. In my work, I like to work with the body, but not from like admiration, not from like an admiration point, or like, oh look, this is the beautiful human body, but
Hmm.
like through it, how I express it. I just try to, in the past, now I'm moving from that, but in the past, I was like just trying to eradicate, eliminate, like shame, all the feelings of shame, of guilt that are so connected with like not only the body, in females especially. It's dangerous to show your body. It's dangerous to be free in that sense, and it's also shamed in a lot of ways, especially sometimes in other cultures, etc. But also my own, also sexually, like a kind of liberation, like burning that feeling of dirt, literally. I wanted to free myself in different ways through all the stages of my art, of my practice.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have been trying to do that. It's I feel like I have like this position to inclination to work with the body because of my parents, how their influence. The body is for me is the perfect way to express not only like shame and all that, but also like decay or evil. It's like the perfect medium to, yeah, to
To tell
express.
that story.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes.
No, I mean, I think if we look back at some of your earlier works and, I think it's interesting that you have the ability to focus on elements of body shapes or activities. You're celebrating it, but not through a facility of the aesthetical norms that we're used to, meaning like this is how we perceive beauty. And you're saying, well, I think this rotten fruit, for example, is actually really kind of gorgeous. And you paint that or that fold of fat that we usually hide, you emphasize it, create it within your composition, and it becomes this enticing part of human aspects. And I'm thinking also back even a few years back where you were changing these facial features and it almost felt like, ways that we now change or we're so used to changing bodies, from operations, be it
Yeah.
or injections or whatever. And you were kind of treating them much more as forms and kind of not celebrating the idea of plastic surgery, but more kind of, well, if we can adjust it this way, what about if we adjust it this way? What's going to happen? And how can we find this tone, this relationship to it? And I think a lot of your work, I think humor helps a lot. Your work often brings a smile to my face just because it is this like weirdness you're celebrating. You're like, God, we are crazy. We are silly to emphasize these things. And you're doing it without finger pointing. That I find very intriguing. You're not saying like, yes, of course you're saying this is ridiculous, but you're not pointing at them and going, look at them for making
No.
this decision. It's more, this is the aesthetic they want. Who are we to not just judge that, but who are we to kind of, why not create with that and create a composition? But I think it's intriguing, this set that you've done for this show. I think feels a little bit of a departure in a good way. I think I see tones of you a lot more, like yourself, with an embracing kind of this mystery language that I can never really define, but that keeps kind of pulling you back in as a viewer, right? There's these, and I mean that's also what I noticed during this show is that people were coming back because they were like, I thought I saw this, and then I saw it again, and I didn't see that, so I had to come back and actually see that in person, and then walk away and still be like, shit, I thought this was totally somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be, which I find that very magical of your work. It's basically three elements, and we see them and we can identify them, but we don't know what is going on, but we accept this kind of narrative that you've created, and we don't demand that you explain it, which I also find revealing for an audience. There is, I have nobody coming out of these shows going like, I don't know what she means, or I don't know what this is. It's kind of allowing people to just perceive and look, which is really rewarding, and I really admire that. And it's been fun to kind of introduce that to people. I was curious about a few things. Where do you actually find some of your ideas? I mean, we've touched on it before, but there's a certain element of classical painting structure that you have. We're thinking of people like Rousseau, but at the same time, people like Victor Manuel. Yet there is also this very contemporary angle that you embrace and that you have and that you explore, and also again, you are giving us a female perspective, which is also kind of refreshing. We're used to seeing these very classical terms coming from males. But how are you at all dealing with it with those ideas that way, or are you playing with the idea of nostalgia and kind of twisting that up and kind of saying, this is what I can do with it. Not to prove a point, but kind of just to explore this world. I'm just curious how you see that and how that influence is used for lack of a better word.
I think I am very experimental. Like I like to experiment a lot, but I see that I don't. I like to experiment with what is already there in art history. Like
Mhm.
I feel very connected to to just the tradition, just painting and drawing, studies, just that, and be very traditional in that sense. So I like to take from everything I have seen that impacted me in the past since all my life, and just take, now this is coming. Let me take this. Then that goes away. And then I like to, I admire a lot of artists from the past. I feel like I am possessed by them, but I just like to just take from them. Like if they were my mentors, basically. I was like their this disciple. My inspirations are always from the past. Like I don't feel exaggerating the features like plastic surgery, but it's always connected to nostalgia, to other times. I am very connected to also the 50s and the 40s, and I think it's something, maybe some a connection with when, for example, when my country was normal and then it's stopped being a normal country, and that was time, the 40s and the 50s. A lot of things changed in the world, and I'm very connected with that. Yeah, I like to look at what artists have done in the past and have this freedom, twist it, to change it, to adapt it to my practice. It's like taking a photo. I paint the photo. I usually paint from reference images, but it's not the photo. Then it comes my own spirit, my own mind that change the whole thing, and then my painting or my drawing is born, like a transformation.
Yeah, because I don't think your work is holding on to the past. It's maybe drinking from that fountain, but it's not saying, oh, this is you're not looking back and this is what it should be type of thing. At least that's not the impression I'm getting.
No, like more than, for example, one of my the ultimate mentor, as I call him, Lucian Freud. He was painting traditional oil paintings, portraits in a time where people were trying to find new ways of expression.
Sure.
He was doing something that was not groundbreaking, that was not abstraction, that was not this and that. He was not old-fashioned. He was very much a master.
Sure. I think the search through material, or accepting that the material is as such, like this is oil paint, this is a painting on canvas. So that is a set basic of rules, and you can push it into the next phase of which is just a narrative of being, without getting too much into art history conversation. I think relating to your work, where you are accepting these rules of composition and the rules of structure, but introduce by you saying that you accept that structure, you're building a narrative that is pointedly you, and that is very much set in this time. You're touching on points that may seem nostalgic, but I don't feel within your work that the nostalgic is the main lead or the only component that we quote unquote have to go back to something. I don't get that sense that is an urge within your work, but I do find it revealing. And I think that's also that element of comfort within that draws people in, is that they kind of recognize those tones. It's almost like spices, like, oh, I know that taste. And then they go into, as they're tasting that, they go, oh, hold on, that's not in a combination that I'm used to. So what am I actually seeing here? And that's where you kind of loop them into your viewpoint and your narrative. It's I don't feel a sense of celebration about going backwards. So that's more it. I'm curious, going back to something we spoke a little bit about, how do you experience your drawings and your paintings? Are these things that you find you're doing it at the same time, or do you find yourself doing series of drawings and a series of paintings? I mean, you're extremely prolific in your studio. You're always working. Do you have any division for yourself in that? Because they do have such different feelings about them.
I usually get very motivated to do something specific, and then I go really intense to do that, and then at one point I lose interest completely, and then something else comes, and I get very disappointed with what I was doing, and then I start like obsessing on something else. So that's how it's been, and it has been difficult to just keep doing the same thing for long periods of time with no end inside. That had never happened to me. I wanted to be prolific, and I wanted to be consistent, but I have come to realize that maybe that's not who I am. Maybe I should just embrace my curiosity to do and express, to develop different sides of my own mind, or just even techniques different. Like, for example, now I discovered oil pastels, and I like it a lot now. My It's a problem that I have is that how can I do everything I want to do with the time I have? I want to paint in oil. I want to color. I want to, and not only paint with oil, but different things in oil, like portraits, other types of works. It's a lot. So far, I think intensity with one thing at a time, maybe, but not feeling bad because I cannot do the same thing forever. The same, just stick to one thing. I don't think I don't think I can stick to one for the rest of my life. I
You
don't know
shouldn't.
if that's bad or good or bad. I don't know. But
No, I think what I've always admired about you is that you've set your own rules, and you've been very, it's been funny trying to people have asked like, oh, what's she like? Well, she knows what she doesn't want very explicitly. If you ask her where she wants to go, that becomes a different conversation. But you're very much set, and that's always been the pleasure to work with you. You're just like, that's that. Done. I don't want to talk about this. This is how I want to see that. And it's not stubbornness. It's just this is the conviction I have as an artist, but also just as a person. I find it also interesting to hear you say when you come to an end of series, I'm finished. I'm done. And you should just, we never see it again. That kind of like, you've played it out to the full extent that you could. And there's no more other conversation. There's no looking back. And it's not that you're ashamed or that you've discovered something that now it's better. No, it's just, you went there, you saw it, and you said, okay, finished, next, boom. And that's something I really admire about who you are as a person. And I think it's hysterical to see it from the sidelines. I'm sure it's frustrating in life in and of itself. It's gotten you, I'm sure, in some corners that you don't want to be in, but it's refreshing because, especially in the art world, we ascribe ourselves to all these rules. And I'm constantly asking, like, who wrote that? Who did that? Why? Why does it matter? And why, if it's not for you, why? And if it doesn't apply to you, then why abide by it? I mean, of course, I'm not talking about ethical things, but just
yeah,
in general expectations, right? It's all these expectations of this is what I need to see. This is what, and then all of a sudden I'm always asking, yeah, but who is that Bart? Or who is that? Who's making that demand? At the end of the day, it's my head, it's my conversation, and vice versa for you. I can see within your work that there's some people that just love this one series, and then that's what they always want to see from you. And I really appreciate that you're just like, nope. If you want to see that, then go back to that book, go back to that chapter, read that chapter over and over. I'm in chapter 10 already, or whatever, 11, 12. So I really admire that about your stance and viewpoint. So that's been really great. I wanted to, again, thank you for all your time on this. So thank you for this show. It's been a real pleasure. It's been refreshing to see how people interact. I love learning a lot more about where you're coming from. I'm sure I'm going to sit back and actually have 20 more questions for you later. But for right now, thank you for your time on this.
thank you for giving me the opportunity to show my work, being so great throughout the whole process. Thank you for giving me also the opportunity to speak a little bit of my mind. Maybe the same thing. I will think about this and say, oh my God.
Yeah.
I should have said
I gotta
this.
go back.
Yeah, obvious. Yeah, but what can I do?
It's okay. This is it. This is now, and this is what we got. So for that, I say thank you. And I
Thank you.
really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.